Every shadow holds a secret, and every whisper in the night could be a warning. Tonight, I invite you to step into the darkness and explore the chilling unknown. I'm about to share with you 5 true Halloween night horror stories that will make your skin crawl and your heart race. These are not just tales spun from the imagination. They are real accounts that blur the line between reality and nightmare. Each story unravels a chilling encounter, a moment when the veil between our world and something far more sinister lifted, revealing horrors that linger long after the final scream. Prepare yourself, because as the clock strikes midnight, you will hear the echoes of fear and the haunting truths that many wish had remained buried. You may never look at Halloween the same way again. So, dim the lights, gather your courage, and let's delve into these spine-tingling experiences that will keep you awake and looking over your shoulder long after the night is through. The night was darker than usual, the kind of darkness that seems to thicken in the air, wrapping around you like an unwelcome blanket. I stood at the edge of my childhood home's yard, the old oak tree looming over me like a sentinel, its gnarled branches twisting against the black sky. It was Halloween, and the memories of the past flickered through my mind like the sputtering candlelight of the jack-o'-lanterns lining the street. That was the night it all began. It was late October, a decade ago, and my best friend Jake and I decided we were too old for trick-or-treating. Instead, we planned for something far more thrilling, a night spent in the abandoned house at the end of our block. It was rumored to be haunted, a relic of the past where whispers of its former occupants still echoed. The townsfolk warned us to stay away, but curiosity had always been our greatest flaw. As we crept towards the house, the air was thick with the scent of decaying leaves and something foul that lingered just below the surface. The moon barely peeked through the clouds, casting eerie shadows that danced like spectres on the ground. The house stood there, a decrepit structure with rotting wood and broken windows, resembling the hollow eyes of a skeletal face. Inside, the air was stale, almost suffocating, filled with the remnants of mold and dust. We flicked on our flashlights, beams cutting through the darkness as we explored the rooms one by one. The living room was littered with old furniture, a tattered sofa, and a shattered mirror. Jake joked about how the reflection might show us something terrible, but we both laughed it off. But there was a chill in the air that night, an unsettling sensation that something was watching us. I dismissed it as nerves, but as we ventured further into the house, the feeling intensified. We found our way to the kitchen, where something caught my eye, a small, rusted knife lying on the floor, half hidden beneath an old table. Its presence sent a shiver down my spine, but Jake picked it up, waved it around like a prop from a horror film, and laughed. "Maybe the ghost of a chef haunts this place, or was it a butcher?" he quipped, tossing the knife back down. I chuckled nervously, but my heart raced as we moved to the stairs. Each creak echoed through the house, a reminder of the years that had passed since anyone had walked those steps. As we climbed, I felt a presence, a heaviness that pressed against my chest. The air turned cold, and for a moment, I swore I could hear whispers, hushed voices that seemed to seep through the walls. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, gripping the banister tighter. "Probably just the wind," Jake replied, though his voice faltered. We reached the second floor, and the hallway stretched out before us like a dark tunnel. Doors lined either side, some ajar, others sealed shut by time. One door caught my attention, slightly open, beckoning us closer. "Let's check it out," Jake said, his flashlight flickering as if in response to our trepidation. Inside, the room was bare, save for a single rocking chair in the corner that swayed gently as if someone had just vacated it. I felt a pull towards it, a strange compulsion, but Jake hesitated at the threshold. "Maybe we should just go back," he suggested, the bravado fading from his voice. Just then, a loud crash echoed from downstairs, sending us both into a frenzy. "What was that?" I gasped, adrenaline surging through my veins. "I don't know, let's get out of here," Jake shouted. We turned to flee, but as we did, the door slammed shut behind us, I stumbled back, heart racing, panic rising as I pushed against the wood. It wouldn't budge. Jake pounded on the door, but it remained resolute. "Help! Someone!" I shouted, my voice reverberating in the suffocating silence. Then through the gloom, a shadow slipped past the window, a fleeting shape that made my blood run cold. "Did you see that?" I breathed. "Yeah! We need to get out! Now!" Jake screamed, his voice cracking. We backed away from the door, searching for another way out. The room felt alive, the walls closing in as the whispers grew louder, wrapping around us like a noose. Suddenly, the rocking chair stopped moving, and the air turned tangibly thick with dread. "What's happening?" I stammered, feeling the weight of unseen eyes upon us. Jake's flashlight flickered again, illuminating the room just as a figure materialized in the corner. A woman, her face distorted with anguish, mouth opening in a silent scream. I could hardly breathe, terror gripping my throat. "Run!" I shouted, and we bolted towards the window, desperate to escape. But as we reached it, the glass imploded outward with a deafening shatter, shards raining down around us, and the figure advanced, her hand outstretched. In that moment of sheer horror, I felt a cold hand grip my ankle, dragging me backward. Jake yelled, reaching for me, but the weight of the darkness pulled me down, deeper into the abyss. I screamed, my cries lost in the clamor of chaos. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. I found myself lying on the grass outside the house, dazed and gasping for air. Jake was beside me, his face pale, eyes wide with shock. "What just happened?" he whispered, voice trembling. "I don't know," I replied, trembling myself. "But we have to leave, now!" We ran, sprinting down the street, leaving the haunted house behind, but the echoes of that night lingered long after. In the days that followed, I learned of the house's tragic history, a place once filled with laughter and love, now consumed by sorrow and the restless spirits of its inhabitants. As Halloween rolled around the following year, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still there, waiting for me in the shadows. Each flickering light, each whisper of the wind felt like a reminder of the horror we had faced. The darkness had a way of calling us back, and I was never sure if we had truly escaped or if we had merely been set free to tell the tale. On Halloween night, as the veil between worlds grew thin, I felt the pull of that house again, and I knew I would have to confront the echoes of my past, whether I wanted to or not. The air was thick with the scent of decaying leaves as I made my way down the narrow path leading to the old Baxter estate. It was Halloween night, and the moon, a sickly shade of green, hung low in the sky, casting grotesque shadows that danced across the ground. I had heard the stories, whispers of the vengeful spirits that roamed the estate, of the horrible fate that had befallen the Baxter family decades ago. But curiosity, that insatiable beast, gnawed at my insides, urging me forward into the darkness. I had come to this forsaken place with my friends, a group of overzealous thrill-seekers who believed in the power of fear. We had piled into our car, laughter echoing against the autumn chill, as we promised ourselves that we were merely here for a laugh, just a classic Halloween scare. Yet, as the estate loomed before me, its crumbling facade and broken windows resembling empty eyes, the laughter faded, replaced by a heavy silence. "Are you guys sure about this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The others exchanged glances, their bravado slipping like the leaves underfoot. But then, with a collective inhale, they pushed through the rusty iron gate, its creak sounding like a mournful wail. I followed, reluctantly, the weight of foreboding settling on my chest. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and something else, something rotten. The remnants of the Baxter family's once grand life lay scattered throughout the rooms. Cracked mirror, a child's forgotten toy, and faded photographs whose faces seemed to watch us as we moved through the darkness. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end, a primal instinct warning me that we were not alone. We split up, as foolish teenagers often do, with promises to meet back in an hour. I wandered into what had once been the living room, its walls adorned with peeling wallpaper that whispered secrets of happier times. A chill crept through the air, wrapping around me like a cold embrace. I heard whispers, soft and indistinct, echoing in the corners of my mind. I shook my head to clear it, attributing the noise to my imagination. Then I saw it, a figure standing at the window, silhouetted against the moonlight. My heart raced as I stepped closer, squinting through the grime. But by the time I reached the glass, the figure was gone, leaving only the flicker of shadows in its wake. I turned to call for my friends, but the words caught in my throat as the whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a tempest. Help us! The sound was a soft plea, fragile and haunting. It resonated deep within my bones, pulling me toward the staircase. My pulse quickened as I ascended, each step creaking beneath my weight. The whispers intensified, guiding me down the dimly lit hallway to a door at the end, a door that felt both inviting and forbidding. I hesitated, pressed my ear against the wood. The whispers became clearer, merging into a single, desperate voice. You must listen. You must remember. I couldn't tell if it was a child or an adult, but something about it tugged at my heartstrings. It was a call for help, a cry from beyond the grave, and I couldn't ignore it. With a deep breath, I turned the handle, and the door swung open, revealing a small, dust-filled room. In the center stood a child's rocking chair, swaying gently as if it had just been vacated. On the floor lay a collection of worn dolls, their eyes glistening in the darkness. I stepped inside, the door creaking ominously behind me. The whispers enveloped me now, a cacophony of sorrow and despair. Help us! Help us! The voice was louder now, almost frantic, as if the very walls were alive with the pain of the dead. I felt an overwhelming urge to comfort whoever, or whatever, was in this room. Who are you? I called out, my voice trembling. What do you need? Suddenly the temperature dropped, and I could see my breath clouding before me. The rocking chair stopped moving, and all fell silent except for the sound of my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A shadow darted past me, quick and erratic. "Stay away!" I yelled, panic surging through my veins. I turned, trying to focus on the darkness, and there it was, a small figure, no more than a child, standing at the threshold of the door. Its face was obscured, but I could feel its gaze piercing through me, a mix of desperation and dread. "Please," the voice whispered, now surprisingly clear. "You must help us before it comes back." "Who? What do you mean?" I stammered, stepping back instinctively. The figure remained still, and as I looked closer, the details became clearer. Its clothes were tattered, and the once bright fabric was now dull and faded. "The harvest moon draws it near," the child said, voice trembling. "It hungers for souls, our souls." A chill raced down my spine. My friends, I had to find them. "Where are they?" I demanded, the urgency in my voice rising. The child pointed down the hall toward a locked door. "They are trapped. You must hurry." I fled the room, adrenaline fueling my movements as I sprinted down the corridor. The whispers followed louder and more frantic with each step I took. I burst through a door that led to the basement stairs, the air thick with dampness and decay. I could feel the darkness pressing against me, suffocating in its intensity. Reaching the bottom, I froze. My friends were huddled together in a corner, their faces pale with terror. "Help us! It's coming!" Sarah cried, her voice raw with fear. "Get up!" I shouted, rushing to them. "We need to get out of here." But before we could move, a cold wind swept through the basement, snuffing out the flickering candlelight. Shapes began to form in the darkness, twisted, ghastly figures, their eyes voids of despair. I felt a weight settle on my chest, a pressing darkness that sought to consume us all. "No!" I yelled, instinctively shielding my friends. "You can't take us!" The figures loomed closer, their whispers merging into a singular, deafening roar. "You belong to us!" I grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her toward the stairs. "Run!" We stumbled back, the air thickening as the shadows reached for us. Just as we turned to flee, The small figure I had seen earlier appeared at the foot of the stairs, blocking our path. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and it raised a small hand, halting the advance of the shadows. "Leave them be," it commanded, voice echoing with a power that belied its frail form. "They are not yours." In that moment, the shadows hesitated, swirling as if confused by this defiance. With a surge of courage, I pushed my friends up the stairs, the little figure holding back the encroaching darkness with a fierce determination. "Go! I'll hold them!" We didn't look back as we dashed through the door and out into the night, the cool air filling our lungs as we burst through the front gate. We ran until we could no longer hear the whispers, falling into a heap on the grass outside the estate. As we caught our breath, I looked back at the Baxter estate, the moonlight illuminating the twisted silhouette of the house. I realized then that we had escaped, but we had also learned a terrible truth. The spirits of the Baxter family were trapped, forever longing for release, forever hungry for souls. And on that Halloween night, I understood that some darkness is meant to remain undisturbed, lest it rise again to claim what is rightfully its own. It was Halloween night, and the air was thick with an unsettling stillness. I had always loved the eerie charm of this holiday, where the veil between worlds seemed to thin, and shadows danced in the flickering glow of jack-o'-lanterns. But this year something felt different. A weight hung over my heart, a premonition I couldn't shake. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I joined my friends, Emma and Jake, on our annual ritual of trick-or-treating through the neighborhood. The streets were alive with laughter and the excited chatter of children dressed as ghouls and superheroes. We were all dressed as classic monsters, me as Frankenstein's creature, Emma as a witch, and Jake as a vampire. The costumes felt like a second skin, yet as I looked at their vibrant faces, I felt a chill crawl up my spine. My mind wandered back to the old tales my grandmother used to tell, a legend about the restless spirits that roamed on Halloween, seeking the souls of the living. We made our way to the old Whitmore house, an abandoned mansion rumored to be haunted. The story went that a family had lived there for generations until, one fateful Halloween night, they vanished without a trace. My grandmother often warned me about the dangers of that house, looping the tale into her lessons about respecting the unknown. But like any other teenager, I dismissed it as just another ghost story. "Come on, let's check it out," Jake urged, his eyes gleaming with mischief. Emma hesitated, her witch hat tilted at an angle, casting a shadow over her face. "I don't know. What if it really is haunted?" she replied, her voice laced with genuine concern. "Haunted or not, it'll be fun. Besides, we're all together. What could go wrong?" I reassured her, though an internal voice whispered otherwise, urging me to turn back before it was too late. We approached the house, the moonlight casting a silvery glow over the crumbling facade. As we stepped onto the creaky porch, I could feel the boards groan beneath our weight, almost as if the house itself was alive, warning us to leave. The door hung ajar, beckoning us into the darkness. "Let's go inside," Jake said, swinging the door wide open, revealing a dimly lit hallway cluttered with dust and cobwebs. The air was thick with the smell of mildew, and as we crossed the threshold, a shiver of unease gripped me. Inside, the house was a time capsule frozen in decay. Old photographs lined the walls, their subjects staring vacantly into the distance, as though they bore witness to some unspeakable tragedy. I ran my fingers along the peeling wallpaper, feeling the rough texture beneath my touch. "What happened to them?" I whispered, almost afraid of the answer. "Who cares? It's just a bunch of old pictures." Jake laughed, his voice echoing through the eerie silence. But Emma was already stepping back, her instincts urging her to flee. "I don't like this place. Let's just get some candy and go," she insisted, glancing nervously at the dark corners of the room. But before I could respond, a loud crash echoed from the upstairs, sending a jolt of fear through my veins. "What was that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jake, ever the brave one, grinned and said, "Let's find out." The staircase loomed before us, its steps creaking ominously underfoot as we ascended, the shadows swallowing us whole. Each step felt like a descent into madness, and as we reached the top, the air grew colder. The hallway split into several rooms, and we chose the one at the end, drawn to it like moths to a flame. Inside, the moonlight streamed through broken windows, illuminating a dusty nursery. A crib sat in the corner, its paint chipped and peeling, as if time had forgotten this room. "Look at this," Jake exclaimed, turning over a small toy, a bizarre doll with glassy eyes that seemed to follow us. As he lifted it, the temperature in the room dropped further, and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. "Maybe we shouldn't have come here," I muttered, glancing nervously at Emma, who was now visibly shaken. Suddenly, a faint whisper echoed through the room, chilling us to the bone. "Leave, while you still can," it rasped, the voice distorted and echoing like a distant memory. "What the hell was that?" Jake shouted, dropping the doll as though it was on fire. The sound of it hitting the floor echoed like a death knell in the silence. Emma screamed, and I felt my heart race as I grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the door. We bolted down the hall, the fear propelling us forward, but the house seemed to come alive, doors slamming shut behind us. The shadows twisted, morphing into dark figures that darted just out of sight. "We need to get out, now!" I yelled, the panic rising in my throat. As we reached the staircase, a figure appeared at the bottom, a tall silhouette that blocked our escape. I froze, my breath hitching in my chest. The figure stepped into the moonlight, revealing a gaunt face with hollow eyes that bore into my soul. It was a woman, her dress tattered and stained with time, her lips moving silently as if she were trapped in a scream. "Help us," she whispered, her voice a haunting echo that felt like velvet against my skin. In that moment I realized this house was not just a structure. It was a prison holding the spirits of those who vanished long ago. They were lost, searching for help, and we were intruders in their world. "Don't listen to it," Jake shouted, grabbing my arm and pulling me back. We stumbled down the stairs, adrenaline coursing through our veins as we raced toward the front door. The shadows writhed around us, their whispers growing louder, urging us to stay. "Please, don't leave us," they cried, their sorrow palpable, but I couldn't stop, couldn't look back. Finally bursting through the door, we ran into the cool night air, gasping for breath as we stumbled into the street. The laughter of children echoed in the distance, a stark contrast to the horror we'd just witnessed. Catching our breath, I turned to Emma and Jake, my heart still racing. "Did that really just happen?" I gasped, disbelief washing over me. "I don't know, but we're never coming back here again," Emma replied, her voice trembling. As we walked away from the Whitmore house, I glanced over my shoulder, the towering figure still standing in the doorway, watching us with hollow eyes. The weight in my chest returned, a lingering dread that perhaps we had not escaped at all. Halloween night continued, the world buzzing with celebration, but I knew, deep down, that we had crossed a line we could never uncross. The spirits of the Whitmore house would haunt my dreams, their whispers echoing in the back of my mind, a chilling reminder that some doors, once opened, could never truly be closed. I remember the autumn of 2012 vividly, a time when the air was crisp and the leaves crunched beneath our feet like fragile bones. My friends and I, naive and eager for thrills, decided to explore the infamous Hollow Oak Forest on Halloween night, a place that was said to be haunted by the whispers of long-lost souls. It was the kind of local legend that gave the town an electric buzz every October but faded into the mundane as winter crept in. But that night, the legend would come alive in ways we could never have imagined. As darkness descended, we parked our car at the edge of the forest, the moonlight barely piercing through the thick canopy of trees. I remember laughing nervously as we gathered our flashlights and made our way down the winding path. The forest felt alive, the rustling leaves and distant animal calls creating an eerie symphony. "Are you scared yet?" Jake joked, elbowing me playfully. I forced a laugh, but the chill in the air wasn't just from the autumn breeze. We ventured deeper into the woods, recounting ghost stories and daring each other to venture closer to the Devil's Tree, a gnarled oak that was said to have once hung the spirits of wronged villagers. I had heard the tales, a spectral figure appearing at the tree on Halloween night, searching for those who had wronged it. Of course, I didn't believe any of it. At least, that's what I told myself. As we approached the tree, an unsettling silence settled around us. The cacophony of the forest faded, replaced by a heavy stillness that felt almost suffocating. Just a tree, right? I murmured, trying to convince myself. But as we stood there, shadows danced in the moonlight, twisting and morphing into grotesque shapes. I could have sworn I saw a figure standing at the base of the tree, its features obscured by darkness. "Guys, do you see that?" I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. "See what?" Sarah, the bravest among us, asked, squinting into the dark. "I don't see anything." But the figure lingered. I felt a cold sweat trickle down my back, the hairs on my neck standing on end. Jake laughed uneasily, attempting to lighten the mood. "It's just a trick of the light. Come on, let's get a picture." He raised his phone, the flash illuminating the area momentarily. But when the light flickered out, the figure was gone. Yet the air felt heavier, charged with a presence that made my heart race. As the night progressed, we recounted more stories, the tension weaving a tight knot in my stomach, each tale more disturbing than the last, each shadow around us more sinister. I could feel something watching, lurking just beyond the periphery of our light. I kept glancing back at the tree, half expecting to see a face peering back at me, a twisted grin, empty eyes. "Let's head back," I suggested, my voice shaky. But Jake, emboldened by bravado, insisted we stay just a little longer. "What's the worst that could happen? It's all just stories." Just then, Sarah screamed. We whirled around to find her standing frozen, pointing into the darkness. "There! I saw it! A figure!" My heart plummeted as we all turned to look. In the distance, a shadow moved, gliding between the trees like a wisp of smoke. Panic surged through me and I grabbed Jake's arm. "We need to go. Now!" But as we turned to run, the air shifted. The path that had felt familiar moments before twisted into a labyrinth of trees, and the oppressive silence was now broken only by the sound of our frantic breaths. Every direction looked the same, and the moon seemed to dim, shrouded by thick clouds. We stumbled into a clearing, but it was different. The ground was littered with old, tattered clothes, scraps of fabric fluttering like lost spirits in the wind. I felt a knot of dread settle in my stomach as I realized the clothes were stained, dark patches that suggested something more sinister had occurred here. "This isn't right," I whispered, fear creeping into my voice. "Maybe we should split up," Jake suggested, the bravado from earlier fading. "We'll cover more ground." "No way!" Sarah shot back, her voice shaking. "We stay together or not at all." But before we could argue further, we heard it, a low, guttural growl echoing through the trees, a sound that sent chills racing down my spine. The air thickened with an unexplainable dread, and I could feel the weight of unseen eyes piercing through the darkness. We began to back away, hearts racing, when suddenly the ground beneath us trembled. The trees swayed as if alive, their branches reaching out like grasping hands. Just then, a piercing scream shattered the night. Sarah had vanished. One moment she was with us, the next, gone. "Sarah!" I shouted into the void, panic surging through me. "Where are you?" There was no response, only the echo of our voices bouncing back to us. Jake and I took off toward the last place we saw her, fear propelling us forward. My heart raced as I thought about what could have taken her. We called her name again and again, but the forest swallowed our cries. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A flicker of movement, the shadow of a figure darting between the trees. It wasn't Sarah. It was something else, something that should not exist in this world. The figure stopped at the base of the Devil's Tree, turning slowly to face us. Its eyes glowed like embers, and a mouth twisted into a smile that revealed sharp, glistening teeth. I felt Jake's grip tighten on my arm, and we turned to run, our breaths ragged as we sprinted through the forest. Behind us, the growl grew louder, more menacing, as if whatever pursued us was relishing in our fear. We stumbled into the clearing again, but this time it felt different, more oppressive, as though the shadows had coiled tighter around us. The clothes on the ground seemed to writhe, forming into shapes that hinted at the horrors that had taken place here. Suddenly, pain shot through my leg as I tripped over something hidden in the underbrush. I fell, my hands scraping against the dirt, and I looked up to see the figure standing over me. It loomed large, its presence suffocating, and I managed to scream as it lunged forward. The last thing I remember was the piercing shriek of the wind, echoing Sarah's name before everything faded to black. When I awoke, the sun was rising, illuminating the forest in an eerie glow. I was alone, disoriented, and terrified. Jake was gone, as was Sarah. The forest was silent, but the memories of that night clung to me like a shroud. I stumbled out of Hollow Oak Forest knowing that some stories are not meant to be told, that some shadows are best left undisturbed. As I reached the edge of the trees, I glanced back, and for a fleeting moment I thought I saw them. Two figures standing at the base of the Devil's Tree, their faces twisted into those haunting grins, beckoning me to return. I turned and ran, the laughter of the forest echoing behind me, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lay within. It was a night like no other, the kind that wrapped the world in a thick, suffocating darkness. My name is Ethan, and I've never been a person to shy away from a challenge, especially when my friends dared me. October 31st had always been our night, filled with thrills of haunted houses and ghost stories told around flickering candles. This year, however, was different. As I stood outside the abandoned Whitmore estate, a shiver crept down my spine, the air heavy with an unnatural stillness. I could almost hear the whispers of the past, calling me closer. "Are you really going to chicken out?" Jenna, my oldest friend, taunted. Her voice broke through the thick veil of dread that clung to me. I looked at my friends gathered behind me, Kevin, the skeptic, Lisa, the brave one, and Tom, the jokester. We had made a pact to explore the estate for a few hours, to prove to ourselves that we were too grown up for ghost tales. But as I stared at the looming structure, thoughts of the stories I'd heard as a child resurfaced. The whispers of those who had vanished within its walls echoed in my mind. "Let's just get it over with," I muttered, pushing myself forward. The rusted gate creaked ominously as I pushed it open, revealing a path choked with weeds and overgrown grass. We stepped into the yard, the moonlight barely penetrating the dense clouds overhead. The house, with its broken windows and peeling paint, seemed to leer at us, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. Our flashlights flickered against the walls, revealing faded photographs of a family long gone. Kevin scoffed, trying to lighten the mood, but I could tell he was unnerved. "What's the worst that could happen? A ghost could show up and tell us to leave?" He laughed, but the sound felt hollow. As we ventured deeper, the floorboards groaned under our weight. Each step resonated like a heartbeat in the silence. I noticed a door, slightly ajar at the end of the hallway. I approached it, heart racing, and pushed it open. It led to a room that felt impossibly cold, even in the heat of late October. On the walls hung old portraits, their eyes seeming to follow us. One in particular caught my attention, a woman in a white dress, her face twisted in anguish. "What's wrong, Ethan? You look like you've seen a ghost," Lisa teased, but there was a nervousness in her laughter. I shook my head, dismissing my unease. We continued exploring, our voices echoing throughout the house, mixing with the unsettling silence that enveloped us. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from the attic. We all jumped, exchanging horrified looks. "That can't be anything good," Tom said, his bravado fading. "Maybe we should just leave." But the curiosity outweighed our fear. We crept up the stairs, each step feeling like a countdown to our doom. The attic was dark and chaotic, filled with old furniture covered in sheets, like ghosts of the past waiting to be revealed. A low hum resonated in the air, an almost melodic sound that tugged at our consciousness. "What is that?" Jenna whispered, but before we could answer, the lights flickered violently. Then it happened. An apparition materialized before us. The woman from the portrait, her face twisted in despair, glided towards me, her eyes empty, yet full of a sorrow that felt insurmountable. "Help me," she whispered, her voice a chilling caress that sent chills racing through my body. I stumbled back, my friends retreating into one another, their faces pale and terrified. "What do you want?" I managed to stammer, my heart pounding like a drum. The figure pointed to a corner of the attic, where an old trunk sat, covered in layers of dust. I felt an inexplicable pull towards it. Against my better judgment I approached, the air thick with electricity. As I knelt beside the trunk, a rush of memories flooded my mind. Fragments of lives lived within these walls, the laughter of children, and the whispers of lost dreams. I unlatched the trunk, my hands trembling. Inside lay a collection of letters, yellowed with age, filled with desperate pleas from the woman. "They didn't believe me," one read. "I saw the darkness. It's coming for me." I glanced back at the apparition, and though her expression was one of despair, I felt a connection, a shared understanding of fear and longing. "What happened to you?" I asked, my voice breaking. The lights flickered again, and the atmosphere turned electric. The shadows in the attic twisted and writhed, and a deeper darkness emerged, crawling towards us. "It can't be free until you understand," the woman said, her voice echoing in my mind. Panic seized my heart as I realized that whatever had taken her was now focused on us. "We need to go!" I shouted, adrenaline surging through me. But the shadows danced closer, and I felt a deep-seated pulling at my soul, as if the house itself was trying to claim me. We bolted for the stairs, the darkness snapping at our heels, but as I glanced back, I saw the woman, now completely surrounded by shadows. "Help me!" she cried one last time before vanishing into the abyss. We stumbled out of the house, gasping for breath as the night air hit us like a cold wave. We didn't stop running until we reached the safety of the streetlights. As we collapsed onto the grass, our hearts racing, we couldn't shake the feeling that something was forever changed. Jenna broke the silence. "Did that really happen?" she asked, breathless. But as we caught our breath, I understood. The woman's sorrow had seeped into us, an unending cycle of despair. We had entered a haunted house, but what we left behind was something that would cling to us long after the night had ended. As we looked back at the Whitmore estate, a gust of wind swept through the yard, rustling the leaves and carrying with it a whisper that echoed in my mind. "Help me." It became clear that some ghosts didn't just haunt their homes, they haunted those who dared to enter, weaving their despair into the very fabric of our lives. So what do you think? Could you handle a night in that haunted place? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed our little thrill ride tonight, give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more spine-chilling tales. Until next time, if you dare to join us again,